door that way. Yeah, that's
Where's the door?
right here. But you kind of want that kind of straight underneath. And then the chimney. Okay, it also has this little tray that comes with it, like a warming tray that you can set stuff on. And they used to have like a hot water heater you could, a little pan for hot water you could put there, but this company, recently the guy that makes them, got sick. And so he's not making the hot water heaters right now, but this is a 4-dog stove company, and I know that's a funny name, but back in the day, the amount of warmth the stove put out would be determined by, like if it's a 3-dog stove, it would take 3 dogs to keep you warm at night, and that's how cold it is. If it's a 1-dog stove, then there's 1 dog. It was not very cold. It's I think this one actually is called a 2-dog stove. So it's cold enough to keep you warm you need 2 dogs to keep you warm. So, of course, I don't know if those are Great Pyrenees where they have lots of fur or not. But, and this goes here. And you would actually...
what's the coldest weather you guys use this in?
Probably about 18.
18 degrees?
Yeah.
But it's sufficient. We were warm.
Oh yeah, still works really well. This actually probably was our next size bigger that we were doing that. We also had a larger one of these set up on our property. We had it on a wood platform, and we had a stove in that, and we would let guests stay in there, and it was plenty warm. Yeah. Okay, so this stove is actually a new stove because we had sold our other one just before we moved, and we bought this smaller one for this tent because the one we had for this tent was too big. And so it hasn't been burned in yet. So if you're gonna burn this stove for the first time, I would set it up outside the tent and burn it because it'll have some fumes that are gonna burn off of it.
Let's go ahead and set it up out here so everybody can see better.
Oh, well, I already got it set up.
All right, I can move it.
Well, let's just drag it out here so we can talk about the stove more.
No, I'm not. Should have it for you. Excuse me.
Okay, here's your chimney. Huh? What? Oh, I didn't put the right one on first.
So you need a husband. Can you cook on that?
Yes, you can. Some of these stoves you can't cook on. Not this brand, but some of the other brands, because the fire in the firebox is too tall, so the fire is too low, and so that you might be able to warm something. But as far as cooking, we watched a video of one guy that was trying to do a video on cooking on his wood stove, and he had one of those, and he had that thing cooking forever, it seems like, and his food never did get done.
So you can boil water in a pot here?
You probably could, but it would take a long time. On this one, it would go quick. Because this firebox is not that deep. Your fire is closer to the top of your stove.
So then you
and
want
some stoves too have like an air pocket thing between here and there, and those are not good either for cooking on.
So the shorter the firebox, the better.
Well, it depends on your stove, how large it is too, and how big a fire you're going to have in there. Okay. This one, the firebox is relatively small.
A lot of the people who use these anymore, everybody's using those little propane stoves for cooking on. And so they're not cooking on the wood stove, and so they want something they can load up with a whole bunch of wood and sleep all night without having to reload it. Okay. However, the stove that Becky is telling you about, where they so they'll have the stove about the same footprint, but it'll be this much taller or so. Okay, they were trying to cook on that stove, and it just wasn't working good because, and I was, just kind of thinking about it. Well, the fire's too far away. Okay. And so that's why we got this one rather than the kind that they want to sell you with the stove. The same companies that sell the stove also sell, companies that sell the tent also sell stoves. And theirs are typically like that. There's another type of stove that we have that we like really well called a cylinder stove. But I realized that with that, where it comes together at the top, there's this strip about 2 inches wide down the very top where the flames actually contact the bottom of the cook surface. That heats water pretty good, but if you're trying to boil food, it's not going to work. So that's one of the reasons we got this one. Now this stove arrived like shortly before, we ordered this one and it arrived shortly before we moved out of our place. And so we haven't even fired this one up yet.
I already told him that.
And yeah, she told you like you would want to fire this up outside to season the paint on it, otherwise it's going to make everything inside the tent smell horrible, like burnt paint. So anyway, just picture this being set up in there. We have it out here so we can see better. I think as far as in there is concerned, picture a cot across the back end, another cot up this side, little table up here in the corner, stove's taking up that part, with some firewood and whatever there. I'm encouraging the use of cots. I was sharing this with one group and the guy said, why don't you just sleep on the ground, put a mat out. Well, that works. But the cot gives you underneath the cot storage space, which really helps. Okay, so maybe the cot's a good way to go. As far as making these stoves operate, there's 3 other things you need beside the stove. This one's an ash bucket because they fill up with ashes as you're burning them. Then an ash shovel to scoop it out, and a poker to rearrange the sticks inside. Now, because I didn't have space, I really would have liked to have brought a larger metal bucket for this, because in my thinking, while this is heating up, you might as well have hot water, which is a blessing for so many different things. And so just to put a bucket, again, I would want a larger one than this for just to be sitting on here with water in it. Now, Becky said that they used to make these tanks that would sit alongside the stove, or you could put it on this side here too, to heat water in. And if you are fortunate enough to get a stove that has one of those, keep in mind that if you ever let all the water out of that, the metal will heat up and it'll mess with the seals on the faucet part and ruin them. So if you take water out, you put water back in. Well, I follow the same principle with this. Take water out, you put water back in. So it never gets all the way down. Then it leaves all sorts of crusty deposits and whatever on your in your bucket, makes it ugly. Running the stove, you always want to keep a layer of ashes or something in the bottom of the stove. A lot of people will put sand in or just dirt. Well, I think ashes are going to be there anyway, and why get other stuff mixed up with the ashes, because ashes are useful for a lot of things. So when I first fire it up, I'll just go real easy with it until I get a good layer of ash, before I really load it up. Let's say like for the night or something like that. Since you're burning wood, you're going to need some wood processing tools. And at a minimum, I would recommend these 2. Okay, a simple bow saw. You can get this at any hardware store or the hardware section in Walmart. Notice I have a piece of hose here protecting the teeth because they're sharp.
Who wants to get cut with that?
You can get cut with this, yes, for sure. And this is a simple hatchet. I have larger hatchets and larger axes, but I found myself consistently reaching for the smaller one because you're doing this a lot, just little stuff like that, splitting up kindling mostly. Like if I'm cutting firewood, I'm using the saw. This is mostly being used for splitting up kindling. And so it's a lot of just wrist work and arm work. And you're not swinging all crazy or anything like that. This is heavy enough that if I do need to swing with it, I can. But again, most of the work is just doing like this, and so makes it easier on your hands. Most hardware store hatchets are junk. Okay, I hate to say that, but that's the truth. I'm not worried about the handle material so much. I like wood because I like more organic stuff. But I saw this one at the hardware store and I thought, that's got good lines. I think that would work anyway. So I got it, and sure enough, it's a fairly decent hatchet, even though it doesn't have any brand name on it anywhere. What I mean by good lines is, notice the top curves up a little bit, but the bottom curves down more. Okay, you see that? Top curves up a little bit, but the bottom curves down more. Also, looking at the profile here and how it thins down. This is about right. Some other ones are real fat through here, okay? Those don't work quite as well. They work fine for splitting, but if you have to do any cutting with it, that thickness is just awkward. I had to regrind the edge here. It had a thicker edge, more angle to it. And so I thinned it down, which makes it cut better, and also it splits wood better that way. When you're splitting, it'll bite into it, and then you can, if you need to. So anyway, like I said, at a minimum, I'm trying to share the minimum stuff you need to have. So if you come here to Rick and Sylvia's property, bring this stuff, you're set, like the people in the story we read. Oh, didn't talk about this. They will sell the telescoping stovepipe set with this for a spark arrestor. Okay, you don't want sparks coming out from here and falling on your tent and making a hole. They'll burn a hole, even though it's fire retardant treated, and so it isn't going to necessarily catch fire, but it will kind of just sit there and smolder away and make a hole. So I recommend getting a rain cap. Notice I put the same screen like this. I lined the inside with it. It didn't come that way. And wired it down in place. What I need to do with this is the same diameter as the stovepipe. Okay, so they won't fit in each other. So what I need to do with this, again, I just got this stuff before we moved and haven't had a chance to do this yet. But I would need to crimp the edge around here, similar to this, so that this will fit inside. One of the major lessons you need to learn about fire building is that flame is burning smoke. Okay, flame is burning smoke. So the fire's coming up here. As it comes up here, it's going to cool and turn back and stop burning. It'll turn back into smoke. And as it cools further, the smoke will condense, and that's what that black sticky stuff is on the bottom of your cook pots. Well, it's going to be all like that inside there. And here's where it really cools off. And so then this will, you want all of that stuff basically to drip down inside. And so that's why the upper piece fits into the lower piece, so that anything that condenses here will run down inside and back down in and reburn. Makes it more efficient and a lot cleaner. Otherwise, you're going to have that black sticky stuff running on the outside. First time I did it, I crimped this one and stuck it inside there. It's running down outside, just making a big, mucky mess. So anyway, I need to crimp this. Probably the simplest way to do this is get a 2x4 and a couple of nails, drive them in next to each other, cut off the heads, bend them down, and then get another nail that's bent this way. So this will slide in over the two nails, and then another third nail's hooked on this side, and then just hit it with the hammer, and that makes a little dent. And then just move it around until you have this kind of a pattern on it. It's not going to be quite that neat or that small. It's going to be a little larger, but then that'll crimp it just enough so that it'll fit inside there. And then that would go on the top. Any rain that falls isn't going down inside, it's going off. If you noticed when this was inside the stove, well, won't worry about that. That there's a little bit of gap between the stovepipe and the stove jack. Okay, in our other stove, we don't have that gap. They fits right next to each other. Yes, a little bit of rain will fall in there, but all the rain is going to like hit the stovepipe and dry up before it gets anywhere and causes any problems. So unless it's really pouring in, you'll probably be okay.
Well, you probably wouldn't want it to touch the stove jack anyway. I mean, you don't want to.
It can. That can handle the temperature. The stove jack can handle the temperature. Okay. Yeah. There's a little, if you look at it on the outside, there's a little flap that covers it for when you're not using it, and so you need to roll that up and tie it up. I don't have that rolled and tied right now.
Somebody ran down the hall.
Oh, okay. Let me get my paper and see what else I need to talk about. Thanks, Lily.
I have a question.
Yes.
What's the purpose of this thing here?
Oh,
the damper.
this is, they call a damper.
Let them look inside and see.
Okay, what that is, just like they call it a butterfly valve, so you can close this off. So what that does is it slows the amount of stuff coming up and going out, and so you're keeping the heat down inside the tent. But you need to like fine tune this, because if you turn this down too much, then smoke will start coming out inside the tent. You have an airflow control here on the front, so you control your fire, the rate of burn between this and this here. That being the most important part of it. Now each stove and tent setup will be different. In other words, if I was to use this same stove in our other tent, it would react a little bit differently than when I'm using it with this tent. And so when you get your system together, you just have to play with it and figure that stuff out. You know, how much wood to put in it to get the heat that you want, and what settings you need to have on the air intake and the damper and all those kind of things. So it's just going to require a little bit of playing with it. Oh. Something else you need to make this lifestyle work. It's a wash basin, a large wash basin. Okay, this happens to be a large dog water dish. I saw this and I thought, oh, that looks like a good size. I wish it was heavier gauge metal, because this particular one will do this. Okay, and if you have just a little bit of water in it, when it does that, you might get splashed in the face. So I don't really recommend this one, but it fits in my box and it works for the demonstration. I would aim you towards Lehman's non-electric catalog. They're online, and they got a store somewhere too. Some of the Amish stores and stuff will have these larger wash basins. One that Becky and I have that we like the best didn't fit in the box, so we didn't bring it, but it's actually about this kind of big around. And you're going to use that wash basin for a whole lot of different things. Okay, you're going to wash, you know, food, dishes, bodies in it, you know, and it's just real handy. We're not used to having something like this, but it works really well. We already talked about being able to bring water up to the cabin or the tent. Talked about hot water, water storage, wash basin, storage under the cots. Did you talk about awnings and stuff?
No.
First, I was going to show you this. For all you ladies that like things neat and tidy, we made these little hook thingies. And so inside the tent here, you can, if you guys want to peek in here, you can hang these up here and hang your bags of food, organize your kitchen a little bit, and even you can hang them up here, a longer one for hanging your lantern or whatever on. And so they're really easy to come by, and they work really good for organizing your stuff. So your food and stuff isn't sitting on the floor; it's hanging from your rafters and stuff. So that's that. And then you can order an awning for this tent. The awnings usually go for the full length of the tent, and see how the tent has these little patches here? This is from the wall tent company. They don't actually put a sleeve here, they just put this here, and if you want to extend your frame out, you just cut a little hole through this. There's a little spot there to do that. And then and the top here has one that's built in too. You can see it's not just for ventilation, it's so you can actually put a pole clear through there if you want to set this up like out in the woods with just a pole. And you would put the same thing on the sides. And then the awning would go clear past. And so if you were gonna order this tent with the angle kit, you would want to order the angle kit with an awning, because then you have more of those angles that come out further. And then your awning goes to the whole length of the tent and over.
How does the awning go? Like an A shape or?
Same shape as the tent, all the way out.
Does it have
And-
the hole for the?
Pardon?
Does it have the hole that the awning has the hole?
Yes,
for
it has a hole for the stove jack too. So it's made for the tent. Now you also, the awning, you can get it in that poly something fabric, or you can get it in the canvas also. And I recommend the canvas. The one that we got for our other one, I didn't realize it came in both fabrics, and I didn't specify, and I got it in the other. And it's all right, but the sun comes right through it. So if you're trying to sit in the shade, it just comes right through that stuff. It's white and it's that thin stuff. It doesn't work very well. The canvas will work much better. So if you're going to get one of those, I would recommend the canvas.
If you don't want to put the stove on that hole, do they sell something to put it on top of that hole?
There's a flap over there.
Oh, there's a flap
And
on
you
it.
just roll the flap up when you're using the stove.
Oh, okay.
And tie it, and when you're not using the stove, then you just cover that hole. So you don't have to use the stove. Like in the summer, you may not want
Yeah,
the
that's what I was
stove.
wondering. I'm like,
Yeah. And
Yeah,
so,
if you're using this for in the summer, like cooking on it, you wouldn't be using it for heat. Just go ahead and bring it outside under the awning and set it up there and use it for
Like a
cooking, and
grill.
that way it's not heating up the house so much. Okay,
so anyway, our other stove, our other tent that we have, the bigger one, it came from a guy in Colorado that makes them. And when you order one from them, they're close to the same price. I think his are just a little bit more expensive, but you order the tent exactly how you want it. Like he'll ask you, well, do you want screens? Do you want this many windows, or one window, or 3 windows? Do you want a door on each end? You want just a door on one end? I mean, you specify exactly what you want, and he builds it for you after you order it. So it takes a few weeks to get it. This one is the Wall Tent Factory and Wall Tent Shop, and they have them ready to go. So if you order it today, it'll be there. He ships it off the next day, so it comes really quick. And they're nice little tents, but the other one is just a little bit. The craftsmanship on the other one's just a little bit better, and like he'll ask you if you want like the sleeve for here, like if you want to extend for an awning, and he actually sews in a little sleeve thing that goes in. So it's going to keep the cold out better. It's going to probably last longer with this. It's going to rip out eventually, probably. So
What's the dimensions of this?
this is
8 by 10.
Is that about a good size?
Well, I like the 10 by 12 better. And like I said earlier, the reason I do is because we can put our cots in, 2 cots in there. We can put a full-length folding table and our stove, and there's plenty of room. And actually, I can even take my chair in there if I want to sit in my chair in there. For this one, you put in the 2 cots, and you have to put in a short table. There's no longer room for a longer table. And then of course you have the stove still.
So how do you have your cots going this way and this way?
yeah, L, and then make an L.
And where would the table go?
Although on the other tent, on the bigger one, you can actually put a cot this way behind the stove, and there's room there for it, and then one that way, and then the table on the other side.
There's stackable cots where you work out.
You can order bunk bed. You can buy bunk beds, bunk bed cots that go in these tents
A friend of
also.
ours has some. We got a couple.
We have a friend that has 3 daughters, and he's got a triple one high, I think.
Does this have a window?
It has a window in the back, Because that's how we ordered it. You can order it the way you want it.
I have a question. Is it strong enough to hold with big rain, heavy?
Oh yeah.
What was
Oh yeah.
What was the question?
It is strong enough to hold up if it rains heavy. Yeah. And it has tie-outs. You can tie it down. We did not tie it down
we didn't
today.
stake it down.
But you can stake it down in case you're in a lot of wind or something.
You notice these tie-outs, like if it's windy, I would have these all staked down. Okay. We went to a program in Arizona once, and it was really windy, and I had like every single stake, every single tie-out staked down. It did all right, but had to have it all staked down.
The same if it's snow?
Pardon?
The same as it's snow?
Yeah, it'll do a snow load. And you can always go on the roof and on the inside and knock the snow off.
But having the stove going inside that's warm, there's going to be like a layer of where it's melted, and it'll just keep slipping down. Especially with the rain fly. The stakes that we use are like these.
For this?
Okay, that's the kind of stakes you use. Or those ones you can get at Walmart where it's, it's just a long spike like that. Use the metal ones.
Any other
We
questions?
didn't set this up inside. We can do that if somebody wants. But I think you kind of get the picture of how tall this is. You want this to be taller than the peak, so that the smoke will blow away rather than smoke, curling up on that one side.
And usually when you're putting it together, inside is the stovepipe. You hand the end of the stovepipe from the outside in
Well,
to hook it up, because
it
otherwise
depends on your
you can't
situation.
get the little thing on top through the hole. So you have to go
right.
the other direction. And unless you can put it on outside, if you're really tall, you can stick it on. I'm not that tall, so I put all the stovepipe together and then I push it through from the top.
Okay, just in closing, want to remind you that you can do upgrades from here. Okay, the first thing I would think of is by putting this on a wood platform. Then I wouldn't be using the tarp. Just the wood floor would be the floor probably. That's going to get you up out of the mud and the bugs, the dirt. It's really going to be helpful.
That's more a permanent location, not just moving it around.
Yeah, that's not something you're going to pack around with you. But I mean, then you could, put the wood frame on and then add to the wood frame and end up with a little cabin step by step if you wanted to. You have those options with this type of tent. The last thing I want to say here is at the bottom of my note sheet, and I'll leave this on the tailgate as we start putting things away. I have the write-up. This is for the 10 by 12. This is for the 8 by 10. This has all the prices for all the different items and gives you a bottom line so you can see about how much it would cost. Now, this is like 2016 prices, and this particular one here is 2018 prices. So keep that in mind, with the way prices have been going, it might be up a little bit. Also, talks about who the tent is from. The stove that I have on both of these lists is that smaller cylinder stove I was telling you about, because I liked that one real well because it was small, easy to pack around. Since we've gone to this one here, this one costs about $50 more, roughly. So if you're going to go with a better stove, just add about $50 to the price, okay?
Where is it?
Any questions before we start tearing down?
She has a question.
Where can you buy this stove and this?
I'm sorry.
Where can you buy the stove and this?
Yeah, that's what he was just saying.
We bought this tent in 2018. We got this stove like about a year ago.
Oh, she
Okay,
said
like less than a year ago. Yeah, because we moved out at the end of
wanted to know
July and
where.
it got here just before.
Just want to know where to get it, not when.
Where to get this? Okay, the people that make this is called the Four Dog Stove Company. Okay, Four Dog Stove Company, and just look them up online.
And you like the cylinder stove better?
No.
I like this one better. Okay. I like the cylinder stove really well. If I wasn't going to be cooking on it, I probably would go with the cylinder stove. But since I want something I can also cook on, that's why I've gone with this particular model. Okay, and again, it's about the height here. How far does the fire have to go before it hits the bottom of the cook surface?
We've also seen online a little stainless steel stove. It's pretty pricey, I'll warn you. But it's a lot lighter weight for moving around, and we were thinking of getting one, but Jim was thinking the stove box, and it looked like it was pretty small. So I don't know, but there's other options you can check with online. Just when you're doing that, just consider the things we were saying about the fire being closer to the top and how it's going to cook if you're going to be using it for cooking on.
And they're constantly coming up with new stuff too.
Yeah.
So
Will this heat all night, or do you have to?
You have to put wood in it during the night.
this
Yeah.
one,
Jim does, I don't.
on a really cold night, I would expect to have to maybe get up like 3 times to put wood. I mean, I'm talking really cold night.
Because it's a
To
small
put- to
box.
put- yeah, because it has a relatively small box.
And that's
If
burning
it's not,
oak.
that's oak. If I was burning pine, it would have to be more frequently. You know, just because of the characteristics of different woods.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the smoke.
any other
That's
questions?
hot
Yeah.
enough though, because the smoke comes through there.
One of these wood stoves to put in, say, like a travel trailer or something on wheels.
I have a little wood
Because they
stove.
make
There's
those.
some kind of
They make little
layer on here.
wood stoves for
I doubt
travel
there is
trailers.
now.
This,
And I haven't quite figured out
Asbestos is
how I
kind of
want
outlawed
to figure
now,
that
so I
yet
doubt
with our
but
trailer.
it's probably an older stove.
But I do want to get that one hooked up with the wood stove
But
somehow, some
even
way.
still, it's got a lot of
See the
paints and
benefits
stuff
of
on it,
this is
so
a
we
mobile
still would not burn
situation
this
with that
tent until it's been burned
Yeah.
outside first. And you'll notice when you burn it outside too, the chimney, you
can't put
can
this in your
tell it burns nice.
No.
Right.
Chimney
so
too. You know.
Seems like it would be better to go with that
Yeah.
because either
So
way
you
you're
want
not
to
going
burn all
to
that
go
off. It'll stink up your
in the
tent.
mountains with that on your back.
You don't want to
No.
breathe that either.
Okay, just let me have everybody's attention here. I'm going to say just a couple more things in closing. Kind of thank you for reminding me of this couple things. Up until, like we did one, before we came on this tour, we did one trip up to Washington State to do a program with our trailer. We've just had this for a couple months. Before then, we always would take our tent, stay in our tent while we did the program, and use the tent that we were staying in as a demonstration tent. Okay.
I would die or you would get me very hurt.
2 reasons we've gone with the trailer. Basically, because God hooked us up with it, but also we're getting a little older, and setting up the tent, taking down. There's just a lot to do. And also the thing that really cinched it for me is like if we're traveling cross country, like when we were coming out here, you know, like for I think about 3 nights in a row, we would just pull into a truck stop or a rest stop and just spend the night. You can do that in an RV. You can't do that in a tent. Okay.
Well, you can do it in your car,
And so
sleep in your front seats. We
it
did
made
that
more
many
sense for
times.
us to go ahead and go with the RV. Okay, like I was telling you and tell everybody here, my goal is to set that up with a wood stove somehow. Okay, I'm still working on how exactly I want to do that, but I mean that is my goal. I wish I had, you know, a plan to lay out for you, but I don't. So anyway, that's the thing there. Again, like I said here at the very beginning, you know, same principles that apply here that we've shared with this demonstration would, you know, work with a cabin or an RV with a wood stove or whatever. You know, those are the elements that you need to have because you're not going to be hooked up to the grid anymore. You know, or it's going to be turned off, and you're going to need to provide those things for yourself. You know, water source, wood heat for cooking and for heating the home, you know, being primarily there, ways to wash and stuff without the running water, all of those things. Okay?
But this is our trailer's home now.
Yeah.
Because we sold our home when we were.
But you would still need your truck and fuel to transport this around because it can't go on your back.
If I'm traveling.
Just like you would need that, right? if
Yeah,
you're traveling.
so like when the time comes that I can't travel anymore, I would be setting up somewhere.
Although we didn't have the truck before, we took it around in our
van first and then
van,
our car.
and then later we have a Traverse,
Chevy Traverse.
Chevy Traverse, and it fit in the back of that.
Also, I hope you're getting the difference between the country living phase and then the wilderness phase. Okay, this is country living. This is not something you're going to stick in your backpack. The RV, definitely you're not going to stick in your backpack. Okay, we'll be talking about shelter options for that phase probably tomorrow. No, tomorrow's Monday. Tuesday. Yeah, tomorrow afternoon or Tuesday morning. So we're trying to hit both of these different phases and offer, instruction in all these areas. Yeah, this is not something you're going to stick in your backpack. This is not flee to the wilderness thing here. This is while we're still able to be mobile and still in touch with society, because there's still evangelism to do. Okay. Any other questions? All right, let's close with prayer. It'll be lunchtime after that, and afternoon class will meet at 2:30, and we'll meet here in the pavilion. Okay, 2:30 in the pavilion, next class. Father, thank you for being able to talk about these things. I just hope it'll be a blessing to those who have heard about it, and that they'll be able to put these principles into practice so that they can be a blessing, they can be an asset rather than a liability. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.